Good morning. This is the Innovation Conversation. Tom Furphy and I are in Las Vegas for Groceryshop 2024 and want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing and what we're hearing at the show. First impressions.
It's busy.
Yes.
You know, I think there's definitely a lot of activity around. I've seen a good mix of obviously tech vendors, analysts, retailers, senior executives from retailers, mid-levels from retailers. So yeah, I think there's a buzz of it being really busy.
Right. Yes. A lot of morning newsfeed readers here, by the way. That's been great.
Yeah.
My sense of it from talking to a lot of people is that there is a sort of an undercurrent of waiting for the next big thing. Like the next big thing isn't here. They're waiting.
Yeah.
Like there's a sense that there's a breakthrough coming. It just hasn't happened yet. Does that seem consistent with what you're sort of feeling?
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I think you come to these conferences, trying to find what is that next big thing.
Right.
And I know, like last year we heard AI. AI was the big theme, like everywhere. Every booth had it in their signage. It was in all their pitches. And yet, was there really a there, right? And so I do think this year, you're definitely seeing, a lot of real AI, really, or, AI is maybe a little stretch, good machine learning,
right?
Integrated into the retailer offerings, or the tech offerings. And it seems to be like a good application of it, like a thoughtful application of it that's working. And I don't know if it's that or, I do also think that while we're not seeing a big thing, I think we're seeing though really good incremental evolutions of the current things. Yeah. And that's not necessarily bad.
No.
Right? Like if retailers are adopting, that next iteration of the current thing, and they're getting it in front of customers, and they're getting customers using it, and they're getting feedback from customers, and they're starting that kind of innovation.
Generating data?
Generating data, just generating excitement and generating that kind of flywheel of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
That's a really good thing.
There was a line somebody used in one of the introductions this morning in the general sessions, and they talked about how AI has gone from R&D to ROI. And I'm not quite sure they're all the way there yet, but they're certainly getting to the point where they're starting to talk more seriously about ROI and trying to find those applications.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
Obviously retail media, everybody's talking about retail media. One of the reasons I wanted to position us here to talk about this is I thought, everybody out there knows I'm pretty skeptical, maybe is the best
of retail media.
About retail media in general, mostly because I think retailers are looking for a check. But one of the examples I thought of really positive use is right over here in Vusion, and you may be able to see the shelf strips that are over there. And that's an example of how Vusion is actually making sure that those shelf strips are relevant to the product.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's no gratuitous advertising.
Contextual, right there, helpful. Yes.
And that makes sense.
That does make sense.
That's smart use of the technology.
Yeah, I think that's good use of the technology, and frankly, that's that does create a fair amount of real estate to make available to the media budgets, right? And that's a pretty good use of it. I was just in a meeting with a retailer, and we were talking about a very customer-centric retailer, and we were talking about retail media, and they're already worried about the over penetration of it, the saturation of it. No, they said it's early yet. There's still a bunch of room for growth, but they can already see in their interactions with their customers that they're going to hit a saturation point probably way sooner than people realize. It's not necessarily bad. It just means that the media interactions you do have with your customers, ultimately just have to be value added, and not just a display that was paid for and therefore helping cover the bottom line.
We've talked about this a lot. If you're judicious about it and strategic about it and even surgical about it, you're not going to annoy the shopper. The problem is going to be if you just throw so much at them that it becomes an annoyance, it becomes that much more noise, that much more clutter.
Yes.
It's eventually going to diminish the shopping experience to the point where people are going to get tired of it.
No doubt.
It's what we talk about with Amazon. The difference is Amazon is so big and so pervasive. To this point, they still have enough value that nobody's saying.
They have enough value, and they've been in the lead, but it's going to be tougher. It's going to get tougher and tougher for them. But I can see it, from the retailer standpoint. It's a slippery slope. It's, the dollars are needed. The fight for profitability is important. And if you can do something, and get monies from from suppliers, via this capability, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And you just got to get it right. You got to strike that right balance.
Yeah. It was interesting, and along these lines, Franz Muller, the CEO of Ahold Delhaize, the big Schmagegi, not the whole Schmagegi, not just
little US.
He was involved in one of the keynote conversations today, and he's really good. He's talking about all the things they're focusing on. I mean, to be honest with you, and my bias here has been obvious for a while. I keep wondering, has he ever been in a Stop and Shop store? But it was interesting when he laid out a lot of their priorities. Mm-hmm. He talked about. I mean, here are the 4 priorities he laid out for the immediate future.
Ahold Delhaize globally.
Years.
Okay, global 4 priorities.
Yes,
okay.
but I mean, he really focused.
The top 4.
He was talking about the U.S.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
DC mechanization, creating payment modules for the future, retail media, and expanding private label in the U.S. because it's 50% of sales in Europe, and they wanted to get to that point here. The word that he never mentions was customer. He doesn't talk about...
How does that translate to customer value? And I guess you could see it in some... Right, if supply chain efficiencies should help you lower price, I guess you could go through each of those and find the customer benefit. But you just hope that, that it truly is in response to their desire, and plan to serve their customers better. Well,
and in all fairness, one of the things it also said is that they lost their innovation momentum during the pandemic. And I totally get that.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important. It just seems to me, if you're sending a message either to technology providers, to vendors, or quite frankly, to customers, the word customer has to be one of the first words that you mention. Because then it establishes, if you're talking to technology vendors, the message has to be, help us be more relevant and resonant to our customers.
Absolutely.
Right? Help us improve the customer experience.
Yes.
You don't have to say our stores are old and stale. I say that. They don't have to say that.
Right.
But I think that, but that to me has got to be the message, and that's the thing that retailers have to think more about, is everything here, they ought to be thinking in terms of how am I going to use this to be more specific to my shopper.
Yes, and I would also, charge, being on the tech side, I would charge all of these vendors here, that better be part of your value prop.
Right.
Like you have to, I mean, there are some things that are under the covers, and will provide efficiencies and be, good for the business or good for, ultimately good for the business, but you really do need to translate that to what is that going to do for the customer, because that's ultimately what you're in business for, and it's ultimately those solutions that win with the customer. They're going to win, and they're going to win for the supplier.
Yeah. Just to conclude, this is sort of inside baseball for people who have been around for a long time, but I see this show, I can't help think to myself, and this is talk about a business blunder, that FMI, used to be called the Food Marketing Institute, used to have a show called Marketechnics, and Marketechnics had an exhibit floor full of technology, and it had keynotes and breakouts. Yeah. And then at one point decided, we don't need to do that. At around the same time, they said, we don't need to do meal solutions anymore. Then they had folded into their big show. That collapsed. Yeah. And this is a perfect example of what Marketechnics could have been had they stuck with it. And it seems to me, I mean, this show has a real value. I think because it does pull a lot of really interesting ideas and smart people under one roof.
It does.
Figuring out how to channel it, that's a different issue. Yeah. But I really like this show.
Yeah, I do too. It's the place to be. And I think across retailers, you've got many, management teams, senior teams, some of the most senior executives and some of the largest, grocery retailers are here. Yeah. And I think that's pretty awesome.
So we'll be back tomorrow with more comments and reactions to what we're seeing on the floor. But that's what's going on. This is what's on our minds this morning. And as always, we want to hear what's on your mind. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, everyone.